T.W. Dewan, again, there can be no doubt, listen carefully, from the evidence found that had the objections of Porphyry, Heraclius, Celsus, and other opponents of the Christian faith been permitted to come down to us, the plagiarism of the Christian scriptures from previously existing pagan documents is the specific charge they would have resented or presented by us, or to us. These works were ordered burned by the Christian emperors. And now, beloved, in the final stages of my contribution to this theme, I would like to offer the following. And I'm a little reticent about having to use the following example as a qualifier for what I have presented, but in this case, necessity overrules prudence. In his book, Origin of Species, Charles Darwin spoke about a man who took care of a large flock of birds, namely pigeons. Now listen carefully. I want you to listen very carefully. I want you to just put aside, well, you can't help that, because if you're really listening to me, you're not thinking. You know that? Do you know how you can stop your thinking? By learning. Learning stops thinking. Let me say that again. Everybody want to go into all kind of meditations? You don't need to go into Om and all that old nonsense. Just start learning. Because right now you ain't thinking. Think about that. Now you know how they got you. Because the problem is that you don't understand as African peoples, as melanated peoples, that the greatest wealth that you pay to this devil is your attention. Because that's what they ask you to do. What? Pay attention. That's right. So now you're paying attention, they're getting wealthy. It's when you stop paying attention that they kill a few of y'all. Black boy gets shot by police 27 times. Now they got your attention. Now you're off the spiritual path and you're thinking along their path. Now, if you're going to sit down and cry about it, then you're dead. Go out and kill the man who killed that boy, then you're all right. But don't sit back and, oh my God, oh my God. Do something about it and then go back to thinking. In his book, Origin of Species, listen carefully now. Charles Darwin spoke about a man who took care of a large flock of birds. They were pigeons. These pigeons were distinguishable by what appeared to be an infinite variety of ornamental designs. They were all types, every shade of subtle blues, subtle greens, blacks, and grays. All were adorned with a wide variety of marks that elegantly characterized their individuality. Now this bird handler gathered up his colorful variety of pigeons and took them out to a deserted island, way far from his home, and released them into the wilds, where these birds settled in and began to establish a colony. After 10 years or so, the bird handler returned to the island, and to his surprise, he finds that something amazing has taken place. The blacks, the browns, the grays, the iridescent greens, the iridescent blues, the stripes, the spotted, the ringed, the striated feathers, varieties, and beautiful, beautiful ornamentations of birds he released into the wilds had all but disappeared. All of their children had metamorphosized into this slate, dark blue generational type, each of them with a monotonous black ring that repeated itself on every one of their wings. All of the beauty of variety of iridescent colors, patterns, and designs in their feathers and characteristics completely disappeared. Now, in staying consistent with this theme, Darwin also made mention of the characteristics of the cultured rose and the cultivated strawberry. How, when left unattended, they shrank back and degenerated and reverted back to an appealing shrub and vines and weeds. This devolutionary process he called the principle of reversion to type. Now, beloved, let's touch upon that theme. These examples may be construed in many ways, but for our purposes, there can be only one interpretation. The feather characteristics of the nurtured, cultivated, cultural birds are symbolic of the culture-centric expressions of African spirituality that were perfected within the confines of a self-actualized, self-cultivated, self-contained, self-enriching, self-evolving, self-correcting, self-healing, self-perpetuating, self-preserving, self-regulating, self-supporting, self-sufficient, self-sustaining paradigm dynamic of consciousness, where the vast variety of feathers from Ma'at represented the vast variety of creative achievements attained by African civilizations, as with other indigenous peoples around the globe. Here we use the markings and colors of the birds as the symmetric equivalent symbolic of the expressions of African spirituality. The blacks were spiritual sciences, the yoga, the meditation, the mathematics, the mystery system. The browns were the agriculture, the botany. The grays were the sculpture and the art. The iridescent blues and greens was the alchemy, the metallurgy, the medicine. The stripes was the architecture, geology. The spotted was the astronomy, the astrology, the psychology. The striated was the art of war. All representative of a highly advanced, sophisticated, self-evolving spiritual civilization. Then it came to pass that these diverse Africans and their individually unique expressions of spirituality began to experience a series of sustained, brutal attacks for over the next several hundred years. This ongoing tragedy eventually caused them to become traumatized captives. They were rounded up, displaced, and taken to hostile foreign environments where their self-evolving mechanisms of cosmic consciousness, their African spirituality, were systematically and savagely brought to a screeching halt. What once constituted an internal dynamic of self-evolved energy that was used by the African mind for the development of higher awareness became a pathological fight or flight survival response to hostile environments. Within us as captives, the higher African spiritual mindset began to atrophy, began to degenerate for a lack of a sustained attention, utilization, and focus. Diasporic Africans, unbeknownst to the majority of us, began to devolve spiritually over the subsequent 20 to 25 generations. We began to revert back to a type, that is, a type of African never before witnessed or experienced by ourselves. A new type of African was created, a religious African. We began to psychologically metamorphosize in the hostile atmosphere of a Willie Lynch environment, which caused us to revert, or should I say convert. Let me say that again. Y'all didn't hear that. Africans didn't revert. We converted to a pathological, artificial, cultivated phenotype made in the image and likeness of our external slave master, who rewired us to self-perpetuate, anti-spiritual, non-critical, non-logical behaviorisms. Beloved brothers and sisters, over subsequent generations, our pathogenic conditioning began to bear fruit. That under the psychological and genetic pruning tools of Willie Lynch, we became spiritually stultified, robbed of our archetypal memory banks, robbed of our genetic reflex to the creator spirit within us. Like the careful cultivation of the Japanese bonsai tree, African and indigenous peoples were spiritually, genetically, and creatively pruned for generations, so that our very soul's ancient association and connection to the triple black cosmic mother would systematically and continuously be diminished. Mighty oaks, redwoods, and baobabs reduced to the size of shrubs, thistles, and weeds. Anybody know what the Japanese bonsai tree is? You can turn an oak this size. All you got to do is just keep pruning it. And that's who we are. Well-pruned bonsais. And to seal the bargain, to shut the door forever, the slave master pruner taught and conditioned the traumatized African mind to supplant his natural, abstract, metaphysically reflexive, inquiring mind with that of the non-critical, non-questioning, non-analytical functionism of the religiously indoctrinated mind. With reference to the examples given to above about the rose, the strawberry, and the birds, African spiritual scientists were actually and acutely aware of this fact called the principle of reversion to type. They considered it in every real work that they have ever done. They always knew that man would revert back to type if he did not keep his culture.